Okay, so we're going to go through a few of the processes to look at and service a cylinder head and valves, which will include grinding the angle and preparing the seat, and then we'll look at all of the inspections we would do on the cylinder head to get it ready to put back into service. All right, I'm going to start and I'm going to hold this up nice and close so you can see it, and you will see that there's my intake valve here is quite dirty, so before we get started I'm actually going to put it in some cleaner and loosen up that carbon, and then I'm going to take the wire brush and clean it up a little bit before we get started. Okay, so that was literally about 5 seconds on the wire wheel to clean it up. Now a little bit of carb cleaner will loosen the carbon and first, or brake clean or anything, and you do not have to be too aggressive on the brush. You want to leave your valve in as good a shape as possible. All right. All right, so we're going to be using an older Sioux valve grinding machine. What we want to do is make sure that you understand the process. The first thing I'm going to do is just take a look at my valve and see whether it is in a good enough condition to want to re-grind. The main thing that I'm going to be looking for is that the width of the margin, and we'll go over that up on the board in a little while and make sure everybody understands all the names. But what we are going to be doing is looking at reshaping the valve face. Now I'm going to hold that in there and hopefully you can see that. This valve face has a very wide contact area right now, and we're going to look at what we do to improve that. All right, so I'm going to go through setting it up into the machine and try to explain it. The first thing will be that to get it into the holder, we can put a little tension on it, and the way this works is that there is a bit of a spring load tension on it in order to on the chuck, and in order to get it released I just simply go like that and release it, and my valve is held tight. All right, so I'm going to go up and go ahead and set it up for the stone, and then we'll have a look at it. Okay, so now we're getting ready to grind the valve. I have it set in the valve machine. We are set to cut the valve's face at 30 degrees. All right, my stone on this grinder, while it's turning, also has the ability to walk back and forth. So when we bring the valve into contact with it, the valve will actually rotate on its own axis, but the stone will move back and forth. It is imperative that when you set this up that you make sure that the stops are set in place so that you don't move the valve into contact, have the stem contact the stone. All right, so you can see it now starting to rotate. All right, we're going to adjust the stop a little bit, let it come out a little bit more. What you want to have is that the stone walks back and forth across the valve face without going off of the face while it's grinding. We have an oil feed here that's we're going to position that, so that's going to run around. I'm going to use the automatic feed because it works a little slower. All right, and it's actually a little dog and gear down here where you can see that the handle is moving in very small increments. And what that will do is bring the stone towards the valve while it's rotating. All right, and it gives me a minute or two to talk about these things. You can speed it up. You always have to use extra caution on this, that you don't bring it out too much. You don't want it to contact hard onto the back face of the valve and cause some damage. And we're getting very close now. I'm going to grab the camera and just swing it around here so you can see from this angle. Right, and there you can kind of see the thing. You'll soon start to hear it make contact. You can start to hear it now. All right. The reason that you're hearing that noise in little bursts is that it coincides with each time that the tooth on the dog grabs another gear and pulls it in. You can see that the contact pattern is getting a little wider on each shot as well. Now, in order to have a good valve grind, we need that surface completely flat. So we're going to carry on until this is straight all the way across. What is a good sign is that it's nice and even all the way around. And that it's not hitting just on one side and then rolling around to the other. And that basically would indicate that the valve is bent or distorted at the end. Now we're actually doing quite a bit of grinding on this to get it out, get the mark out of it, so it's kind of an indication that that valve probably won't pass scrutiny when it comes to whether it's good enough to go back in the vehicle or not. I'm just going to speed the process up here a little bit. Now that I'm getting just about to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop feeding it and I'm going to start reversing it. So I'm going to run the motor or the grinding stone away from the valve before I disengage it. And you can see when I bring this back now and stop it, that we have made our new valve face all the way across. All right, and we'll stop that and we'll turn off the oil at this point. So we've just removed the valve from the grinding machine. I'm going to hold it up here and you can see that we have a nice flat edge all the way across. There doesn't seem to be any distortion in it as well, so it's all good. And our margin hasn't really been touched on that grind at all, so we're going to go ahead and use it on this. Now it's probably below spec, but you know, that would be from what every manufacturer says, but I'm just going through the process of showing you how to do this. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is we've done this, and every time we do the valve face, we would clean up the tip end as well. All right, we're going to use the same machine. The opposite end of the machine, though, it has another stone on it, and we're going to grind in a new flat surface. And then we are going to put a chamfer on the end of the stem as well. So here we are on the other end of the machine. I have pulled out the transmission, so now when I turn it on, my stone no longer moves back and forth. It is stationary. All right, I have another stone on this end, and what we are going to do is we're just going to bring this into contact with it very slightly, move it back and forth across the surface, and that's it. Roll it away, take it out, and then we're going to inspect it on the end, and you should see we have a nice, sharp, clean end across the end of the stem. All right, now we can stop it for a second so I don't have to yell over this. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this adapter in, and we are going to chamfer an end on here. The purpose of that chamfer is so that when you are putting your new oil seal over it, that it does not cut the inside of the oil seal. All right, so we're going to turn this on again. Set this back here. Now, I hold it in the holder. I bring it in until we just start to touch. And then I just rotate the valve while turning it until it's all the way around and we're done. So there is not a lot to doing this, right? Well, you can see we have a little chamfer on the end here. Looks good. And we have a nice fresh end for my rocker to work against. So when we are doing a valve, all right, and I've started with the valve and I cleaned up the dirt on the back, and we ground the face and we ground the stem and we put the chamfer on it. The reason I always start with this is because if this valve is not worth doing anymore, I'm going to throw it away and get a new one. When we go to cut the valve seat in the cylinder head, we are going to cut it for the valve. We're going to check it with the valve to make sure it has good contact or seal all the way around, all right? So I'll go through around or swing it around and we'll get this set up and we'll go over that procedure as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is the cylinder head itself, all right? Now, the valve we ground is an intake valve. So it is, those are the large holes, all right? So you can see that this is where it would have sat. All right, so this is the one we're actually going to look at. It hasn't been ground, or if it wasn't done very well. And we're going to set it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab a wire brush, and I'm going to run it up and down in the valve guide. All right, this removes any dirt from in there. I'm just going to show you kind of an idea. Here are 3 of about 20 different spigots or guides we have. All right, so what we want to do is we want to get a guide that fits very tight. That has a slight amount of play in there. If we were to use that, the play would transfer in that my stone would be able to move back and forth a little bit, and it wouldn't be a perfect center on my valve when it's sitting. So I'm going to try for one that's a little, that one is too big. It's like, that one's pretty good. There's no play in there. And what we can do is give it a little bit of a twist while we're pushing down, and now there's no play in the bottom of that. So before we begin to grind the valve seat, we have to have our stones set to the right angle. Now, when I ground it on the valve machine, I ground the valve face angle at 30 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind the valve seat angle at either 29 or 31 degrees for an interference angle. The topping and the throating stone I'm probably going to do at 15 degrees and 45 degrees. So I'll go through, I'll show you how we're going to do the stones, and then I'll go ahead and do the rest of them and then show you how we do it on the cylinder head. So this is the stone angle shaper, or whatever you want to call it. My stone sits on here and we engage it with the drive. It's probably going to make a lot of noise, so you won't hear anything. It's going to spin it very fast, and then I'm going to make adjustments on it. This has a diamond tip on the cutter, and I will keep adjusting it up and then moving it back and forth like this so that it makes the whole surface a nice even angle. All right, so first thing we do is set our angle for, I'm going to go for 31 degrees, so it's 30 degrees plus just a hair. All right, I'm going to make sure that it's not going to interfere with it when I start it to turn, and then we'll begin. Now, what that has given us is a nice even angle all the way across here and all the way around. There's no marks from the last time this was used. Okay, so now we're ready to get our head set up. All right, we have ground the valve. All right, and we are set up. We've got our guide in place. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to install a very light spring onto the guide. All right, and then my 45 degree angle stone, or sorry, 30 degree angle stone, because that is my valve seat angle that I'm looking for. All right, so what we're going to do, and I kind of want to show you how much contact or how long the contact is that we actually need. All right, so the idea of the spring is that it's going to move my stone away from it and not let it ride on there too long. I'm going to start it spinning very fast. I'm going to bounce it twice, and that's it. All right, so it'll give you an idea of how much, how long we need to actually do this. That was it. All right, so I'm going to zoom in and move the camera and zoom in a little bit now. And hopefully you can see that that little bit of contact has actually cleaned up the surface quite a bit. All right, around at that 30 degree angle. All right, so now what we do is we will remove the spigot, and I'm going to use a black Sharpie pen, and what we're going to do is we're going to put some lines around the valve face. Then we're going to insert it into a couple of taps and to turn and take it back out, and what you will see is where the contact is. Now, the contact pattern on this is very wide. It's a little wee thin line, so I don't know, let's try and stay in focus here. A little wee thin line, and it's out right near the edge, the very edge.